Hey BookTube, it's Ashley at Bookish Realm, and I am back with another video. Um, I decided I've been wanting to shoot this video for a while, and I've seen so many videos on BookTube, and I've watched a few of them before I actually went to shoot this video. But one of my goals, like it seems like it's also one of the goals of a lot of other people here on BookTube, is to annotate their books more in 2018. For the longest time, we've kind of gotten into this routine of believing that writing in books or marking up books or, really getting into the meat of a book is like a sin. Like, you don't do it. You don't write in your books because it completely destroys them. And I have to say, I used to be like that, but I'm not anymore. So I'm going to show you a few ways that I actually annotate my books and how my annotation has evolved and how I plan to continue my annotation process in 2018. So most of the books that I have purchased this year and that I plan to read this year or reread this year that belong to me, I will be annotating them, meaning that I will be highlighting, I will be writing, I will be tabbing. That is just a personal decision that I have made that I think is a really good tactic and tool for me when it goes back to me writing reviews. I've actually now gotten to the habit of writing a review for every book that I read right after I finish it. So I have a log of reviews of books that I haven't even posted on my blog yet. I take like part of the review and I upload it onto Goodreads whenever I finish a book, but for the most part, the actual meat of the review is sitting in a Google Docs log that I've been keeping and holding on to. So when I'm posting reviews on my blog, I literally am copying and pasting because it's just a backlog of reviews, which I'm really actually enjoying that, and it's making my life a whole lot easier. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I actually have a sample of about, let's see here, that's 5 books of how I have grown and changed over the course of annotating my book. So when I was in high school, I actually annotated a lot because I was in AP Lit and I always took an English honors class. So it was natural instinct for me to annotate my books just because of the class discussion and papers that I had to write. Like, I needed to really engage with the text. After high school and college and stuff, I kind of annotated, but not as much. Actually, y'all, I don't really remember the academic aspects, which is so sad. I don't remember the academic aspects of college, more like the social aspects, because I had a really, really great experience in college. But I do know ever since I graduated from college and I've been reading, got heavily back into reading in like 2014, I have not annotated my books, and I have realized that I have a tendency to forget a lot because I read so much. Now, annotation doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to remember everything, but I feel like annotation forces me to engage with the text more, and it also is a really great guide for me to go back and see what I thought about books and how I've actually felt about books. I actually want to go through, and I'm looking for over time, and I probably will just start ordering them because I know they're going to be super cheap, is the paperback copies of Harry Potter. So right now I'm doing a reread through audio, but I'm going to do a reread of physical through the American paperback copies, and I'm going to annotate those. I will not annotate my Scholastic editions. I can't bring myself to do it. Usually I'm like 100% down for it, but like I feel like that's just like a collector's item, and I can't bring myself to annotate those. I will be going back through and annotating those. Like, that's just the childhood favorite that I feel like every time I read those books, I get something different out of them. And I want to annotate because I want to see what I get out of it, at different stages in my life, because what I got out of it at 8, I'm not going to get out of it at 26 or when I turn 36 or 46, and I plan to reread these books for the rest of my life. So when I decided that I wanted to go back and start annotating again, I did not want to write in my books. I was like, I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. But I did start the process of using just tabs. So this is an example of me just simply tabbing a book, and this is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. So I essentially went through and I tabbed various aspects of this book. I'm not even sure. Yeah, so these, I feel like these tabs were mostly just quotes that I like. I actually took notes during the reading process of this book because the magic system was so complex. I probably will end up doing a reread of this book because I don't remember as much, even though I've written a full review on it. I don't remember explicit details. I remember the general story behind it, but I probably will end up rereading this book and actually going through and writing in it before I continue on with the series. So like I said, when I initially began the annotation process, I simply just tabbed my books with interesting quotes. There were no color coordination aspects involved in it at all. It literally was, oh, I think this is really interesting. I think this, what this character has said, is interesting. I think a certain aspect of the plot is intriguing, so I'm going to put a tab on it. Another example of that is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This was definitely a book ahead of its time. Really interesting dystopian, classic dystopian novel. And once again, this is just one area where I just kind of, I just put the tabs and aspects that I thought were interesting. I didn't really do any commentary. I didn't explain why I thought it was interesting. I didn't really think much about it. I just kind of put the tabs where I thought, you know, it was important. And in some ways that was really great, but in some ways I felt like I was, you know, going back and looking at this now and picking out a random tab. You know, I put a tab on a spot that says the students nodded emphatically, agreeing with a statement which upwards of 62,000 repetitions in the dark had made them accept not merely as true, but as self-evident, utterly indisputable. So I don't even know in what context, like, I thought that quote was interesting, or why I even engage with that quote, because there's nothing there for me to kind of reference, except in the moment that I read this book 2 years ago, for some reason, I thought that passage was interesting. So I went from just the tabbing to actually wanting to engage with the text more. And this happened when I wanted to read my first big Russian lit piece. And it was Anna Karenina by Leah Tolstoy. And so this is my copy. And this is really different. So in this copy, I actually have highlighted and written so many different things. And this is where I can actually see, like, okay, like, this is what I was thinking. So on this part, I highlighted an aspect where I thought that somebody was doing something really screwed up. And I said pretty effed up when he so-called felt remorse at the beginning of the book. So I really heavily was engaging in this annotation. There was a lot of highlighting and a lot of engagement with the text, because I felt like there were so many messages in this book that went beyond just beautiful quotes and interesting stuff. It's a very politically heavy book. Like, I highlighted this quote here that says, "The primitive community with its mutual guarantees is falling apart of itself. Serfdom is abolished. There remains only free labor, and its forms are defined and ready, and we must accept them. The hired worker, the day laborer, the farmhand, you won't get away from that." And I translated that as being nobility has to get over losing serfs and learn to work with other things. So that was a huge political change that was going on in the context of this book, and nobility was not reacting well to it. And I thought that quote really exemplified that inability for them to get over it. Sometimes when I was marking stuff, it was just a straight reaction. Like, I marked this and I said, he can't be serious. And then this one was just a straight quote when I highlighted it and circled it and said, when in doubt, don't. And I put best damn quote. So when in doubt, just don't do it. So some of this stuff is really interesting to go back and now look over, because I feel like it was really thought about. Like, I really, really engage with this text. And I can see how I was feeling about characters, how my relationship with characters changed. So, like, in the beginning, like, I felt bad for Anna Karenina. And then here, by the time I got to page 639, I marked a quote and said, really, really starting to dislike Anna. She's more worried about society than life itself. So even in here, I can kind of see that I'm heavily looking at character development, how I went from really adoring a character in the beginning to kind of disliking them towards the end because they've made decisions or they've done things at this point that I can't agree with. So this one is where I really started my whole entire process of annotating differently. So what you see here now is, once again, I still made no distinction, no color coding as far as the tabs are concerned. So these tabs literally are just tabs to show like the quotes or the points where I actually did mark a passage in the book, and that's pretty much it. There is no color coding at all. Another example is an annotated book that I actually have done of a library book. So this has no color coded aspects to it either, even though it looks like it's color coded. It really is not. I just was running out of tabs all over the place, and I decided I had to buy another set of tabs. And what I had to do here was that because it was a library book, I almost in the beginning was doing kind of like double tabs. So up here, at first what I was going to do was just going to tab it and mark the quotes. But because I was reading this for class, I was like, I actually need to engage with the text because I have to fully analyze this book. So what I did here is I would mark a quote and then I would say something. So the quote that I marked here was, "But it's unfair, cried Fern. The pig couldn't help being small, could it? If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" So I marked that, and then below it I state, "Illustrates the logic of a child," which is really interesting that that's what she equates it to. And then just some other stuff where I actually stopped doing the double thing and then just started actually just writing on the tab. So I marked this quote that says, "That's wonderful," said Wilbur. "How's the plan coming, Charlotte? Have you got very far with it? Is it coming along pretty well?" Wilbur was trembling again, but Charlotte was cool and collected. So I'm going to do a full review of this book and discuss some issues that I had with it, because this tab says Wilbur isn't that bright. So I had a very different experience reading this book as an adult, because the first time I read this book I was a child, and now at 26 I have read this book and I did not like it as much as when I could see why it appeals to children, but as an adult I didn't really care for it as much as I would have if I was a child. But these quotes actually make it clear as to why I had some issues with this book. So there are ways that you can also annotate library books if you need to use them for like a class, or you just have them checked out. You can always annotate as you go, and then if you want, take notes in a notebook. It is a longer process if you don't own the book. Like, I have to keep this book until I do my analysis of it for class and before I do the review for this channel, because it's not mine. So I definitely couldn't write and highlight in this one. All right, so the last example that I have here is actually one where things are color-coded. And this is where I've grown to. So before, you saw the tabbing, and then with Anna Karenina, you saw the tabbing that was non-categorized, but there was highlighting and writing. So this is the book where I not only have categorization, highlighting, and writing, but also summary cards that occur kind of at the end of an X amount of chapters. So this is the more intense annotation that I have grown to do. So this is a book that I recently started, and my annotation process has become very complex. And it's not something that I say everybody should do, but this is solely for me. So I do categorize, and these are I use simple dollar store sticky notes. I don't get anything expensive. And I do have a color coding process. So the green sticky notes are simply for character development or changes. The purple sticky notes that you see in here are for quotes that I really have enjoyed. And then for this book, the orange quotes are going to be definitive of plot changes. So I also have some other quotes some other sticky notes where pink will be for like lovable, cute moments, and then blue will stand for sad or depressing moments. So that's, it doesn't really it's not that complicated. I think the pink and the blue are the easiest because we often associate love with pink and red and sadness with blue. It's just the orange, the purple, and the green that probably are the most difficult. So in this book, I'm doing the same thing that I did in Anna Karenina, where I have highlighted a quote, and it says, "There's too much going on now, Jindy. I'm really sorry. I'm trying to do the best that I can. I really am, but apparently it's not good enough, and it's all getting to be a bit too much." So in here, this for me was a character change. And this was a statement made by the character Clark, and I thought it was a huge change from what he was at the beginning of the book. So up here, I put Clark is a coward, and he shouldn't be taking out his problems on Ginny. And I know exactly what that's referring to. For the quotes, I don't really say much in reference to the quotes, but I mainly just highlight them and maybe just have like an initial reaction. So this quote says, "Rejoicing with others in their times of joy and your times of sorrow is a mark of true love." And that's something that I actually believe is true. When you're depressed, but you can celebrate with someone else and their accomplishments, that is a mark of true love. And I just put the quote there, and I thought that it was extremely beautiful. What I have done now is that after like maybe every like 25, 30 pages, I have paper clipped index card in here where I put at the top what's happened, and I kind of just give a brief summary. So I'm not going to read this because it does have spoilers on it, and I hope you're not trying to read it. And then I do a section at the bottom that has future thoughts, and my future thoughts at this point where it's about to get super ugly. So, and I was actually really, really right about that. So this year, this is what I'm aiming towards my books. That means that my book reading process is going to be a lot slower with my physical books that I own, as opposed to years where I've been just flying through books, not really remembering them, not really engaging. And the first half of this book, you can kind of see, is not really annotated. And that's because I had the library copy at first, and it was so good to me. I was like, I need my own physical copy of this book. So you can pretty much expect my books that I read for this year, that I own in my collection, are going to all start to look like this. And I don't feel like it's destroying the book. I feel like it's loving a book. I feel like it's engaging it. And I feel like when I look back at these over the years, and if I reread, because my key for buying books for my collection are books that I want to read over and over and over again. If it's just a book that I kind of like I'm not going to buy it. I don't have an urge to buy it. It has to be a book that I have the urge to reread over and over again. So if I keep reading these books over and over again, then I get to see how my perspectives and views change as I grow as a person. So it's nice to be able to have these things as a reference. All right, guys, so that's it. I know that was a long video, but I kind of wanted to get that out so you guys kind of understand how I do my annotation process. If you have any more questions about my annotation process, please let me know in the comments below. As always, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. All of my social media links will be linked in the down box below. As always, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Bye.